Power gathered people as a brazier gathers moths. In Topkapı's quiet courtyards, a new politics took shape. Family, favor, and fear braided into policy. At its center stood Hürrem Sultan, called Roxelana in European letters, widely believed to have been a Ruthenian, Ukrainian girl from Rohatyn, seized by Crimean raiders, sold at Kaffa, and carried through the slave markets to the old palace in Istanbul. There she entered the harem school as an asemi-odalık, was converted and renamed Hürrem, the cheerful one, and learned Turkish, music, needlework, and the strict choreography of palace etiquette. Chosen for service to the Sultan, she was presented at Topkapı. Wit, steadiness, and a gift for conversation made her a favorite. Bearing sons and a daughter strengthened her hand. In due course, Süleyman manumitted her, and, breaking custom, raised her to Haseki Sultan. He took her in formal nikah, making her his lawful wife, an act almost without precedent for a reigning Ottoman sultan. From this union began a transformation in Ottoman governance itself. The palace, once a distant ceremonial heart of the empire, became an active and complex center of politics, where dynastic women, household officers, eunuchs, and viziers intertwined their interests. Under Süleyman and Hürrem, the harem was no longer merely a private sphere, but an arena where statecraft and family strategy overlapped. This inner court influence would deepen across the next century, culminating in the so-called Sultanate of Women, when mothers and wives of sultans steered diplomacy, patronage, and even military appointments. It brought refinement and continuity to some policies, but it also made the machinery of rule more intricate, more personal, and more vulnerable to rivalries behind closed doors. This burden, the heavy braid of palace politics, only began to ease after the mid-17th century, when the Köprülü Grand Viziers, beginning in 1656, re-centered executive authority in the Vizierate, allowing the empire's administration to run with more discipline and less harem entanglement. Hürrem endowed kitchens and baths, brokered petitions, wrote letters to foreign courts in a hand both gracious and pointed. To admirers, she embodied piety with intelligence. To enemies, she embodied influence with a woman's face, and they could not forgive it. Her rise coincided with the eclipse of Bayezid Ibrahim Pasha, the brilliant Grand Vizier who had shared Süleyman's campaigns and confidences. Ibrahim grew careless with symbols, signing documents as if princely, dressing in ways that drew unwelcome comparisons. Whether arrogance or the malice of others doomed him, the end was certain. A midnight arrest, a silken cord, and a court that woke to a silence louder than drums. His death warned every favorite that love from the throne is real, but not permanent. Around the succession, tensions hardened. Süleyman's sons, Mustafa, Selim, Bayezid, each gathered supporters. Mustafa, acclaimed by soldiers and many subjects, seemed the natural heir. Rumors that he intrigued with hostile forces, true or engineered, proved fatal. Summoned to his father's pavilion, he was strangled by mute attendants as the janissaries outside muttered, and the empire absorbed the shock. Bayezid later rebelled, was defeated, and died in Persian exile. Selim survived the storms and would inherit. These tragedies were not aberrations, they were structural. In an empire without fixed primogeniture, fratricide remained the cruel grammar of continuity. Hürrem's part in these dramas remains argued over in chronicles and coffee houses alike. She certainly fought for her own sons and placed trusted allies in key posts. she certainly softened the image of rule through charity and correspondence. Between those truths lies the theatre that fascinates posterity. Meanwhile, governance continued. Grand viziers rose and fell. Scribes kept the state's memory. Provincial notables bargained over levies. And the navy, now under Barbarossa and his successors, made the central Mediterranean a less hospitable Habsburg lake. Intrigue could nick the body politic, but institutions, law, revenue, office, were thick enough to scar over. If Suleiman's reign dazzled, it also endured because its machinery worked while the actors changed their masks. Rüstem Pasha, meticulous, rose to the Grand Vizierate and married Mihrimah, Suleiman's daughter whose own letters courted kings and calmed governors. Hürrem founded charitable complexes in Istanbul and Jerusalem, anchoring her influence in brick and soup. European ambassadors, scandalized and attentive, learned that access ran not only through the council chamber, but also through the apartments where the dynasty's women weighed replies. Chapter 5. Road to Vienna. Decisive change came in 1526 on the plain of Mohács. The Hungarian army, brave but poorly handled, charged into rain-soaked ground and tight Ottoman fire. Janissary volleys broke the line. Timariot cavalry, land-granted sepoys, rolled the flanks. Artillery shattered the center. In under 2 hours, the medieval kingdom collapsed. King Louis II drowned in retreat. Bishops and magnates fell where the mud held them. Buda opened its gates. Europe shuddered. The old defenses had failed in daylight. The new question was not whether Suleiman could win a battle, but whether anyone could stop him before Vienna. Suleiman moved carefully. He garrisoned strongholds, stocked granaries, and drew Hungarian nobles to his side with pay and predictable rule. Then, in 1529, he marched on Vienna with what looked like a moving city. Wagons, camels, smiths, munitions, engineers, imams. Relentless rain turned roads to porridge, wheels sank, oxen died. By the time the crescent tents rose under Vienna's walls, the season was against him. Sappers dug, guns spoke, ladders climbed, but storms tore ropes and wore down men. A well-led Habsburg garrison held firm. Suleiman lifted the siege with his army intact and his reputation unbroken, judging, coolly, that the sums no longer added up. Europe called it salvation, which was another way of admitting how close it had felt. After Vienna, the struggle became a long game, fortress for fortress, river line for river line, a chessboard of marches and tributaries. Diplomacy matched the sieges. Suleiman courted France against the Habsburgs, eased Venice with privileges, and sent envoys home, impressed but unsure which promise would rule the day. That created strategic oxygen, room to advance when the map opened and to pause when it snarled. The appetite did not fade. At sea, Barbarossa tilted the balance of the Mediterranean. In the east, the Safavid frontier smoldered. Raids and counter-raids, war on terms the Sultan chose. To contemporaries, these years felt like a tide, sometimes crashing, sometimes drawing back, always returning. Courts from Krakow to Cairo set their policy by its rhythm, waiting for the next surge towards their own shores.